Healing apartment in 40 meters? The science of biophilic magic. The moment you step into the apartment, you suddenly feel as if you are in a forest where the air is fresh, the light diffuses softly through the foliage, and the walls seem to breathe right along with you. Your heart slows its rhythm, your thoughts clear, and a strange, almost forgotten feeling arises in your chest, a peace as deep as the morning dew on the grass. Yet you are not in the taiga or on the shore of a mountain lake, but in an ordinary city apartment with an area of only 40 square meters, where just yesterday ordinary bustle, gray walls, and a sense of cramped space reigned. And everything changed not because of a redevelopment or expensive renovations, but thanks to an idea born back in the 70s of the last century, which only now, when humanity is again asking the question, how are we to live on this planet without destroying it and without destroying ourselves, is beginning to gain incredible power, transforming from a niche concept into a vital necessity, especially for those forced to huddle in cramped city boxes where every centimeter of space matters and every interior detail has the potential to change mood, health, and even the future. This idea is called biophilic design, not just a passing trend or an attempt to decorate an interior with a palm tree in the corner, but a deep, thoughtful philosophy based on a scientifically proven fact. Humans evolved in symbiosis with nature, and when we tear ourselves away from it, we do not even realize how much we suffer. Our vision suffers from the constant glow of screens, our nervous system suffers from the monotonous background noise of air conditioners and elevators, our immunity suffers from a lack of natural light, and phytocides, those very volatile substances secreted by coniferous trees that protect us from viruses. And so now, when scientists all over the world, from Tokyo to Berlin, from Sydney to Toronto, increasingly come to the conclusion that our homes should not just be a shelter from the outside world, but a living extension of the natural environment, capable of supporting our physical and mental health, an amazing paradox arises. The less space we have, the more important it is to make it smart, feeling, and breathing. And it is precisely in the conditions of a small apartment that biophilic design reveals itself in all its power, like a skillful magician who does not increase the square footage but expands perception, does not break walls but blurs the boundaries between the internal and external, does not require 1,000,000 rubles for renovation, but makes you feel as if you were living in a house grown from the earth rather than assembled from concrete blocks and drywall. For the first time, the term biophilia, in its modern sense, was introduced by the American biologist Edward Osborne Wilson in his famous book Biophilia, published in 1984. And even then, he described with striking accuracy what is confirmed today by hundreds of studies. Humans have an innate, genetically determined craving for living systems, for green plants, for the movement of water, for the natural textures of wood and stone, for the change of day and night, for the sense of cyclicality, and for the presence of other living beings, even if it is just a fish tank or a cage with a songbird. This craving is not just an aesthetic whim, it is as vital as oxygen or water, because by cutting ourselves off from natural rhythms, we disrupt the work of our own biological clocks, weaken our immune system, increase the level of cortisol, the stress hormone, and gradually turn into people who increasingly complain of fatigue for no reason, of insomnia, and of anxiety, even if there are no objective grounds for worry. Interestingly, the first experiments in implementing biophilic principles were conducted not in residential homes, but in hospitals. Back in 1984, researcher Roger Ulrich published a paper proving that patients who could see trees from their ward window recovered faster, required fewer painkillers, and faced post-operative complications less often than those looking at a brick wall. Since then, hundreds of studies have confirmed, even images of nature, video projections of forest landscapes, or the sound of a babbling brook can lower blood pressure, improve cognitive functions, and enhance mood. But the true power of biophilic design is revealed when it becomes part of the architecture and interior rather than just a decoration. In Japan, for example, the practice of Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing, is officially recognized as a method of stress prevention and recommended by the Ministry of Health. People go to the forest not for a walk or for sport, but simply to be there, to breathe, to listen, and to watch. And this produces such a powerful therapeutic effect that scientists have even isolated specific substances, phytocides, which are released by coniferous trees and which inhibit the growth of bacteria and viruses while simultaneously stimulating the production of natural killer cells in the blood. And now imagine, what if this forest pharmacy could be partially transferred to your apartment? Not literally, of course, not growing a pine tree in the bathroom, but creating conditions under which the body will receive at least part of those stimuli it evolutionarily expects. And here we come to the most important misconception encountered by almost everyone who hears about biophilic design for the first time. People think it is about plants, and only about them. You plant a few cacti on the windowsill, buy a ficus for the corner, hang a picture of a waterfall, and you're done. Now you have a bio-style. But this is a deep misconception because biophilia is not about the quantity of greenery, but about the quality of interaction with natural elements. The fact is that modern science identifies no less than 14 key principles of biophilic design, grouped into 3 large categories: direct natural contacts, indirect natural contacts, and spatial conditions imitating natural patterns. And if you think that simply getting some ivy is enough, you're missing 90% of the potential. For example, one of the most powerful but rarely used principles is dynamics and variability. Nature is never static. The wind moves the leaves, sunbeams crawl across the floor, shadows lengthen toward evening, and the water in a stream shimmers with 1,000 shades of blue and green. In a typical apartment, everything is the opposite. Identical light from ceiling spots, constant temperature from the air conditioner, dead silence, or the monotonous noise of ventilation. But what if you replace the harsh overhead lighting with a combination of warm LEDs that mimic the changing times of day, and a table lamp with a rice paper shade through which the light filters as if through a cloud? What if you add a compact desktop fountain, not for the noise, but for a quiet, unobtrusive gurgling that the brain recognizes as a signal of safety, because water in nature is life, moisture, and fertility? What if you use curtains made of natural linen that do not just cover the window, but play with the wind, swaying slightly even in a light draft, reminding you of the presence of air, of its movement, and of its living nature? These are indirect contacts, not nature itself, but its echoes, its hints, its language, understandable to our subconscious even if the mind is busy with work or a TV series. Biophilic design works particularly impressively in limited space, where every centimeter must carry meaning rather than just function. Take, for example, a standard Khrushchev-era apartment with an area of 33 square meters. For many, this is synonymous with cramped quarters, stuffiness, and a constant feeling that there's nowhere to go. But imagine that you enter it and immediately find yourself not in a hallway cluttered with closets, but in a miniature transitional garden. A narrow zone along the front door, where on the floor there are tiles with the texture of mossy stone, on the wall is a vertical module with moss and small succulents, and above your head is a narrow light line imitating a sunbeam breaking through the tree crowns. This creates a threshold effect, a psychological boundary between the external, noisy, tense world and the internal, protected, calm one. And already at this stage, the brain begins to switch to rest mode. Further on is the kitchen living room, where instead of a standard wall cabinet above the sink, there is an open space with a shelf made of raw wood holding ceramic jars for grains, glass jars for herbs, and between them miniature pots of basil, thyme, and rosemary, which you do not just use for decoration but actually use. You pluck a leaf, throw it into the soup, feel the aroma, and touch something living. The dining table is not glossy plastic, but solid oak with visible knots, cracks, and traces of time, because perfect smoothness is a sign of artificiality, and nature loves irregularities, asymmetry, and randomness. And even a small balcony, which for most is cluttered with boxes or closed with blinds, can become a point of contact with the sky. It is not necessary to grow a vegetable garden. It is enough to hang a planter with climbing jasmine, put a compact larch bench, and add 1 or 2 elements of copper, for example, a forged towel holder or a candlestick, because copper in nature oxidizes, changes color, and this slow transformation is another hint at cyclicality, that everything living changes and ages, but remains beautiful at the same time. And the most amazing thing is that all of this can be done without redevelopment, without tearing down walls, and without expensive materials. The key is not in the budget, but in the intention, in the intent to create not just an interior, but an environment in which a person feels not just comfortable, but whole. But let us talk about the most subtle, most undervalued aspect: light. In nature, there is no switch on or switch off. Dawn comes gradually, the sunlight changes color from a cool bluish to a warm amber by noon, and by sunset, it becomes so red that it triggers the production of melatonin, the sleep hormone in the brain. And in our apartments, the same white LED light from 6 in the morning until midnight, from which the pupils constrict like those of an owl at high noon, and the brain loses its orientation in time. Scientists from Harvard Medical School have proven that chronic disruption of circadian rhythms is not just a cause of insomnia, but a risk factor for developing type 2 diabetes, depression, and even certain types of cancer. And here, biophilic design offers a simple yet revolutionary solution: lighting synchronized with the solar cycle. This does not necessarily mean $1,000 smart lamps. It is enough to use 3 types of light sources. In the morning, a cool white, about 6,000 kelvins, for vigor. During the day, a neutral one, 4,000. And in the evening, a warm amber, 2,700, like that of a candle or a fireplace. Even ordinary incandescent lamps, which many consider outdated, are actually ideal for evening lighting. Their spectrum is close to a sunset. They do not suppress melatonin, and they create that very atmosphere of coziness that we intuitively seek. And if you also add the movement of light, for example through blinds with uneven slats, through lace curtains, or through glass with bubbles like in antique windows, then playing reflections appear on the floor, which the brain perceives as a sign of life, as a signal. Everything is fine here. It is safe here. In one experiment in Singapore, where the climate is hot and humid and apartments are often like air-conditioned capsules, designers created a pilot project. In a typical 2-room apartment, they replaced ceiling spots with a system of light tubes that directed natural daylight from a corridor window deep into the rooms, and added a projector to the bedroom with a slowly changing landscape. Not a video, but specifically static frames switching once every 5 minutes, as if you were lying in a meadow and looking at the sky where clouds float almost imperceptibly. The result? The project participants reported a 28% reduction in anxiety levels, improved sleep quality, and even increased concentration at work. And all of this without medication or therapy, solely because their environment stopped being dead and started speaking to them again in a language understood from birth. And now for the sound, the most invisible but incredibly powerful element. In nature, sound is not a hindrance but an information environment. Birds singing signals safety, the rustle of leaves signals wind, and the gurgling of water signals proximity to a source of life. In the city, however, the sound environment is a constant noise of traffic, the hum of an elevator, and the thumping of neighbors upstairs. And the brain, unable to switch off, works in a mode of chronic anxiety. But what if we can rewrite the sound environment without drowning out external noises with headphones, but by weaving natural patterns into them? Scientists from Stanford University discovered that even 15 minutes of listening to the sounds of rain or the forest reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain region responsible for fear, and strengthens the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system, helping us to think rather than panic. And here, it is important to understand, biophilic sound is not background music. It is acoustic architecture. For example, in a small apartment, you can use sound-absorbing panels made of cork or coir, not only to reduce echoes, and in cramped spaces echoes are particularly irritating, but also because their texture softly diffuses sound, just as moss does on forest soil. You can put a compact water element in the corner, not a fountain with a powerful pump, but a quiet drip irrigation system where water flows down stones into a small container, creating an almost inaudible but subconsciously perceptible sound. You can even use the resonance of wood, shelves made of solid wood not covered with lacquer, or doors made of veneer. They are not only beautiful, but also vibrate at low frequencies like a tree trunk in the wind. And this vibrational field, though weak, is perceived by the body as a signal of stability. In a project in Zurich, designers created a sound map of an apartment. In the hallway, a light rustle of bamboo in a narrow planter. In the living room, a quiet gurgling of water. In the bedroom, absolute silence reinforced by a wool carpet and thick linen curtains, and in the bathroom, drops falling into a ceramic bowl, because water at the moment of rest should be slow, measured, and predictable, like the breathing of a sleeping person. And of course, we cannot ignore the materials, those very substances with which we come into contact every day, often without even noticing their texture, smell, or weight. In mass construction and renovation, glossy surfaces, plastic, MDF with film, glass, and metal dominate. Everything is smooth, cold, and inert. But the skin of our palms, the soles of our feet, and even our fingertips are evolutionarily adapted to contact with natural materials, with rough bark, with soft moss, with warm wood, with cool stone, and with silky wool. And when we deprive ourselves of this contact, we lose sensory diversity, one of the key sources of cognitive stimulation. Therefore, in a biophilic apartment, even the little things matter. Towels not of microfiber, but of natural cotton or bamboo fiber. They are softer, absorb moisture better, and over time become even more pleasant to the touch. Bed linen made of linen or organic cotton without chemical impregnation, because the skin during sleep should breathe rather than be in contact with formaldehyde residues from cheap fabrics. The bedside rug is not synthetic, but made of jute or coconut fiber, with an uneven, almost unruly surface that massages the feet every morning. Even the handles of doors and switches can be chosen not from plastic, but from bronze, copper, or wood, because metal in the hand gives a sense of density and reliability, while wood gives a sense of warm liveliness. And the most amazing thing is that all these materials are not necessarily expensive. For example, an untreated pine board coated with linseed oil will serve for decades without losing its beauty. Old bricks or tiles made of recycled clay are often cheaper than new porcelain stoneware analogs. The key is the sincerity of the material. Let wood remain wood, stone remain stone, and clay remain clay, without attempting to improve them under the guise of granite or marble. Because the subconscious senses a fake. Even if the mind says how beautiful it is, the body whispers that it is not real. And this creates internal tension that we do not realize, but which accumulates. However, perhaps the most revolutionary thing about biophilic design is not how it changes space, but how it changes us. When you live in an environment that constantly reminds you of your connection with the living world, you begin to perceive your place in it differently. You stop being just a consumer, you become an observer, a participant, and a co-creator. You notice how a plant stretches toward the light and instinctively turn the pot so it grows straight. You see how the change in lighting affects a child's mood, and you begin to adjust the light like a conductor, not by the clock, but by their state. You feel how the moss in the vertical garden absorbs moisture after a shower, and you realize that even the bathroom can be part of an ecosystem. And at some point, you catch yourself thinking that your apartment is not a box you are inside, but a living being you interact with. And this change in attitude is the most valuable thing, because when we restore the connection with nature within, we inevitably begin to care for it without. You throw away plastic less often because you notice how it does not fit into your tactile environment. You choose products with minimal packaging because you feel the difference between fresh herbs from a pot and wilted ones from polyethylene. You begin to notice birds outside the window, the sounds of the wind and the shades of the sunset. And this is not romantic sentimentality, but a return to a natural state of perception, to what a human was before the era of screens and air conditioners. And here, a powerful social effect arises. Biophilic design is not an elitist luxury for owners of country houses, but a democratic tool for equality because it is available to everyone who has a window, a socket, and a desire to change their environment. In Barcelona, there is a green balconies project where residents of apartment buildings unite to create vertical gardens on facades, not for beauty, but to reduce the temperature in summer months by 2 or 3 degrees, which reduces the load on air conditioners and saves energy. In Tokyo, in micro-apartments of 15 square meters, designers use mobile biomodules, folding structures with plants that can be moved depending on the season or mood. In Sao Paulo, in slums where access to clean air is limited, activists create indoor forests of ficuses and dracaenas that purify the air and reduce dust levels. And in all these cases, the result is the same. People feel more human because their space stops being a background and becomes an ally. And yet the question remains, what if you have neither the time, nor the money, nor the experience? What if you are renting an apartment and cannot drill walls or change floors? The answer is simple. Start with micro gestures, with those actions that take 5 minutes and cost nothing. Put a glass with a willow or lilac twig on the windowsill, not as a bouquet, but as a living indicator. When the water becomes cloudy, change it. When the leaves droop, add light, and you will enter the rhythm of care. Replace one light bulb with a warm one so that the light becomes softer in the evening. Hang a curtain of linen strips on the door. It will not only hide the hooks, but also rustle slightly with every pass, reminding you of the presence of air. Put a cushion made of coarse wool on the sofa, not for beauty, but so your skin remembers the sensation of natural texture. Open the window for 10 minutes in the morning and evening, not for ventilation, but to hear if there are birds, if there is wind, if there is life beyond your home. Because biophilia is not about a perfect result, it is about a direction of travel. It is about adding at least one note of nature to your environment every day, a sound, a light, a smell, a texture, and gradually, step by step, turning your dwelling from a shelter into a conviction that a human is part of nature and not its master, that comfort is not the absence of inconvenience, but the presence of harmony, that coziness is not many things, but the right connections between them. And when you understand this, you will stop asking how to make a small apartment bigger and start asking how to make it more alive, because that is the true luxury of our time. Not in square footage, not in brands, not in technologies, but in the ability to feel at home, not only in your apartment, but on this planet. Therefore, right now, after you finish listening to this video, pause and ask yourself one simple question. What in my apartment is breathing? What is moving, changing, growing, smelling, making a sound, or has a texture you want to touch? If there are fewer than 3 such elements, you have an incredible opportunity, not to redo everything from scratch, but to start with one small step. Plant an onion on the windowsill in a glass jar and watch as a green sprout grows from a dry bulb. Or put a piece of raw wood on a shelf, not as decor, but as a reminder. We are made for life among the living, and even within 4 walls, we can restore this connection. Not as a sacrifice, not as a fashion statement, but as an act of love. For yourself, for your loved ones, for this fragile, amazing world that we temporarily call home. And remember, every plant you grow, every ray of light you direct, every natural material you choose, it is not just an interior detail, it is a voice you cast in favor of life, a voice that says, I am here, I remember, I am part of all that lives. So let us make it so that our homes do not remain silent, but sing, quietly, gently, truly.